So we'll be going over the following question. How do I complete IRS Form W-4P if I recently retired? This probably is the number one most commonly asked question in the comment section of this YouTube channel. So I figured I'd create a dedicated video specifically walking through what happens with your tax withholdings when you retire and how to complete your Form W-4P with that understanding. So it's not that complicated, but we will walk through the steps of the process. So before we do that, let's briefly go over the steps required for completing IRS Form W-4P. So these are the steps that you follow without respect to whether you've retired in the year, whether you've been retired all year. This is just the steps that are outlined on the form. So step one, you enter your personal information. The only thing in this step that impacts your tax withholdings is your marital status. Step two, you would complete either steps 2, 3, or 4 if they apply to you. Step two, you only need to complete this if you have income from a job or more than one pension or annuity, or if you're married filing jointly and you and your spouse have multiple sources of income. So this is because generally speaking, for every income source, you may have a Form W-4, you might have a Form W-4P floating out there, and this step attempts to take into consideration other tax holdings that other payers may be withholding. So if you're able to capture that information and get that calculation in here, then your payer here should accommodate your tax withholdings. The goal is for you to not have one source of income get taxed multiple times. And that's what this step is attempting to do. It's from the questions that I get from my audience, this part is not clear, but if you understand that step 2 is required, not really required, but that's what it's there for, specifically to go through those steps if you have income from other sources and you already have tax withholdings. Step 3, these would be claiming specific tax credits that you are aware of. So, child, other dependent tax credits, other known tax credits that you may be aware of from prior years. So, foreign tax credit, education tax credits, whatever tax credits you know will be on your tax return, that's what step 3 is for. You total those up and you put them into here, and that's taken into consideration. And then step 4 is a list of other optional adjustments. So either other income that's not from a job or a pension or annuity. So things like if you got $5,000 a year of interest income and that's not accounted for elsewhere, you don't have taxes withheld. If you have IRA withdrawals, you would put any of that stuff here, right? So you would put that amount here if you wanted to. Again, this is not required, but it does allow you to capture other sources of income and have taxes withheld on this W-4P as a result. If you have deductions that are above and beyond the standard deduction and you want to reduce the amount of tax withholding accordingly, you can complete a worksheet, the deductions worksheet, and then enter that number here. And then finally, if you want extra withholding, then you would put the amount of extra withholding that you would want from each payment. So be careful about that because this tells your payer that you want this tax withheld from each payment. If you get paid in retirement twice a month, then that would be withholding twice per month. Don't confuse this with the amount of tax that you would want to be held each month if you're being paid on a different schedule other than a monthly schedule. So those are the basic steps of Form W-4P. let's take a brief look at what this might look like in a year that you've retired. So some adjustments you might want to, like, depending on when you retired during the tax year, if you say you had a regular job in January and you had 11 months of pension and you completed your Form W-4 in February, then you probably don't need to have as many adjustments on your Form W-4 because you're going to have a lower income and you're going to have more time throughout the tax year to do that. Whereas later in the year, if you're retiring in September or October or later, then if you were on track, there's probably not much of an adjustment. If you find out that you were under withholding on your income, on your W-2 income, and now you've got to the point where you're looking to pay taxes out of your pension, you might be making higher adjustments to make up for those missing taxes. And then if you find out that you're actually kind of on track for a refund, then you have some flexibility. You may decide to just kind of keep going and then revisit it next year, but you do have some options if you find out that you've overpaid. So how much does your income change? Some people go from making six figures down to a, barely five-figure pension. Sometimes people have been in a job where their pension is not significantly different from their income. A lot of people usually have their pension as a percentage of income, and that might be a good way to kind of account for that. And again, this is just mental kind of understanding. You're not doing these calculations in your head. You're just kind of using this as a litmus test. Like, for example, if I was making $100,000 a year and I retired in effective 30 September, and I knew that I was ahead of the curve on my tax withholdings, then I probably wouldn't need to do a whole lot. I might even explore the option of just having completing a Form W-4P and then putting down zero withholding and then reevaluating next year. So that could be a step. Tax withholdings versus your income. So again, this goes back to, were you on track, were you behind, or were you overpaid? So we're breaking this down into steps that you should take to update your withholdings. We're going to say the current year, and then we'll walk through this with a step-by-step example. So what you would do in the current year is get a tax estimate, and you can either do this with the IRS Form 1040-ES worksheet. That's the estimated tax voucher worksheet from the form instructions, and we'll actually walk through that momentarily. You can also go to the IRS website and use their tax estimator tool. What I'll do is I'll put links in the show notes to separate videos that I've done on each of these so that you can determine which one you'd like to do for yourself. And then use that to determine for yourself whether or not you're on track, whether you're behind, or whether you're overpaid on your taxes. Based on that information, you would complete your Form W-4P. You would then, once your withholdings take effect, you would reevaluate your tax estimate, and then you would update your Form W-4P if needed. So that's in the current year to make sure that you're on track for. So if you retire in 2024, these are all things that you would do in 2024. And then in the following year, I would start from scratch with a new tax estimate based on an entire year of your post-retirement income. So, that might look very similar to the prior year if you retired in January or February, or it might look completely different if you retired in October or November. But either way, update your tax estimate, and then based on that, update your Form W-4P. So in this example, we're going to use our hero, John Doe. And in this case, he retired on June 30th. Before his retirement, he had a salary of $100,000 per year. His pension is now $40,000 per year, and he had withheld taxes of $5,000 all the way through June 30th. So, other relevant facts: he's a single taxpayer. He's using the standard deduction. His prior year tax liability is $11,000, and he has no additional credits, deductions, or taxes. So he's a pretty straightforward tax situation. So we're going to do step 1, which is complete the Form 1040 ES worksheet. That's right here on the right-hand side. And so his prorated income is $70,000. That's half a year of the $100,000 income plus half a year of his $20,000 pension. His standard deduction, and then we use that to calculate his tax liability based on that, which is $72.41 using the 2024 tax rate schedules. He has no additional taxes, so that carries all the way down through line 11C. Now that we go through a couple of steps to make sure we're avoiding the under withholding penalty. So the first one is the 90% clause. So if you've paid at least 90% of your current year's tax liability for most taxpayers, or 100% of your prior year's tax liability, then you pick the lesser of those two, and that's your required annual payment. So again, last year he made $11,000 worth of tax payments, but his current year tax liability is the $65.17. Before that, his taxes paid from his working salary was $5,000. So he's got $1,517 for the remaining 6 months of the year. So that breaks it down to about $250 per month. So in step 2, you would determine whether or not you're on track. To me, my analysis is right here. It looks like he's in good shape. If he owes $1,000 or less at the tax filing deadline, he shouldn't have a penalty. So that additional tax penalty, we'll put links in the show notes to the tax form that you would complete for under withholding. That's IRS Form 2210. And so basically he has to make some payment, but he has some options. He could send in the estimated tax payment voucher that comes with the Form 1040 ES. He could make a $500 or so payment on the IRS website, or he could use Form W-4P and have that those taxes taken out of his pension. So in this case, I might consider leaving everything blank, or you could make a separate payment to the IRS and then just indicate zero withholding on your form. You can do that as well. So, but I would consider leaving it blank. John Doe follows her advice, and this is step 3. He's completed the Form W-4P and he submits it to his pension company. So a couple months later, on September 1st, he rechecks his withholdings, and it turns out in July and August, his pension company withheld $300 per month, both in July and in August. So the remaining tax payments, he basically has $917 that need to come out between September, October, November, and December. So he's on track to receive a refund at this point. He decides not to update his Form W-4P until next year, which is the step 5, update your Form W-4P if necessary. So basically, that's how I would set this up if I were in John's situation. A couple of considerations that I did not take the time to put in here, and we'll go back to the Form W-4P here. So you can't put zero withholding on here. That is expressed in the form instructions. You can put other sources of income, other tax withholdings. You can do a lot of things. If you're concerned about under withholding penalties, you can always check your Form W4 or check your Form 1040 ES on the regular basis, just every couple of months, just to make sure you're on track. You can also make an estimated tax penalty. But again, in this situation with John Doe, it doesn't look like he would have to. You can always put an extra withholding. Again, make sure that you understand, how your payment structure is, so that you're not, so that your withholdings meet the expectations. So, and again, at the end of the year, you would want to evaluate, specifically how your new income situation is going to look. Odds are pretty likely that you're not going to get the exact numbers here. I mean, this was pretty, exact in terms of details. Like, John Doe retired at exactly 6 months, so it was easy for me to do the math here. He, it took exactly 0 time for his withholdings to take place, because presumably he set that up before his retirement, but that's not always the case. So, in your situation, it might look a little bit different. You might find out that tax withholdings didn't take place until middle of August, and now you might be a little bit behind. But again, the goal of your Form W-4P is to get close enough within that $1,000 so that you're avoiding tax penalties, and then you can always reevaluate at the beginning of the year, which I would say is a prudent thing to do for most people. So with that said, I'll put links in the show notes to all the resources we've created about the forms and everything that we mentioned here. Please consider subscribing to our newsletter if you like reading our articles, and I'll put a link to the Form W-4P article in the show notes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like watching these videos. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.